Okay, so two arguments against the liberal eugenic view. I mentioned this before, but it actually matters. It's the stratification of society argument. In vitro fertilization is expensive. Future technologies like CRISPR are going to be expensive. And so the only generation that's going to be able to have a child with like 10 more IQ points than their parents is going to be the super rich. And so the next 5 generations of society, if this holds true, the economically powerful are going to spawn a race or a next generation of genetically enhanced humans. And then the rest of the world is going to not catch up. That should give us that's actually a good art. We should be like, whoa, let's be careful if that's the outcome that we're going to get. Now, maybe that won't be the outcome. Maybe the technology becomes cheap and widely available. Maybe, but if that's the outcome, like, that's. Ugh. There's another argument that's interesting too, that comes from ableism and disability studies. And this argument's a little bit more unintuitive, but it goes back to the Iceland stuff. Imagine we now have the ability to manipulate the next generation, and we just get rid of all these things that we think of as less than, like, oh, fix no more blind people and no more deaf people and no more like whatever. Pick something that we classify as a disability. We get rid of it. It's counterintuitive. When I started studying this, I'll tell you, it didn't make sense to me until I really dug into it. But people who are disabled, a lot of them, not all of them, advocate for something that's called a mere difference view. If you're blind, you have enhanced hearing. You experience the world in an intrinsically different way than someone who is sighted. If you're deaf, you have a different experience of the world. Now, as someone who's like able-bodied, most people look at that and they go, obviously that's a worse thing. You lack something good. But a lot of people within disability studies say that you do lack something, you do lose something, but you actually gain other stuff too. So the distinction here is something between a mere difference view and a bad difference view. And that's a complicated debate that also could deserve its own video or like dissertation, but or whole career. But if we allow for liberal eugenics, this sort of middle-of-the-road view, it would seem possible that we could eliminate many different possible ways of being human. The Down syndrome case, the deafness case, the blindness case. There are other ways of existing than the cognitively normal case. And actually, I wasn't going to do this, but let's... This is an interesting book from a while ago. I haven't read it in like 8 years, but Nancy Andreasen talks about creativity, and there's actually a relationship between like depression and anxiety and creativity. So maybe as well, like just like blindness, you lose sight, but you gain hearing and you gain smelling and you gain these other ways of intervening with the world. Maybe as well with if we did too much tinkering with who we were, we might accidentally we might not get the next Mozart or the next whoever because we selected against the very traits that were necessary for creating that kind of a creative person in the first place. Okay, cool. So, two arguments against the liberal eugenics view: stratification of society and the elimination of other equally legitimate ways of being. What might be one argument for? One argument for is it's human nature to be like Icarus. We want to improve. We want to make ourselves better. This is why we flew to the frickin' moon and why we want to go to Mars and why we are just developing all these new technologies and why we are, I guess this just cycles back to my very first point, which is if you're a parent and you want to create the best possible life for your child and you have an opportunity to do that, it seems, even if we have these other objections, it seems, at least on an individual level, understandable for a parent to be motivated to make a decision to make their child's life better as they understand it to be better. So, I'm going to stop there. That was a lot of things. Wrapping it all up, Cognitive and genetic enhancement can come about currently through in vitro fertilization, genetic or pre-implantation diagnosis or screening in vitro fertilization cases. But that technology is going to get stronger with things like CRISPR. There were already successful human trials in Oregon and in China where they were able to eliminate a genetic disease from the population. There are three separate views on this. There's the conservative, the libertarian, and the liberal eugenics view. Conservative, don't mess with human essence, don't play God. Libertarian, do whatever you want. And then the liberal eugenics view, which says that state-sanctioned eugenics, state-mandated eugenics is the problem, but opt-in, voluntary, direct manipulation is fine. And I would add, I didn't say it before, but like that's kind of what we do anyway with sexual selection. Like you don't marry and procreate with someone who you don't want to marry and procreate with, right? You have a vision of what you want your kids to be like, and so we already do this. Maybe that's not a good argument, but whatever, it's worth mentioning. And so there's arguments against liberal eugenics, and some of those arguments against liberal eugenics are stratification of society, like Gattaca, that movie was really good, and also like Brave New World, and the ableism arguments. And then arguments for, definitely weaker, haven't put as much effort into those right now. It's human nature for us to want to make our lives better for the next generation. And so if we have the capacity to do that, shouldn't we? Okay, thanks for watching. This is Does That Make Sense? I'm just talking about what I'm researching. If you have questions, throw them downstairs. If you've liked the video, hit thumbs up. If you, yeah, cool. See you guys in the next one.